We have an odd relationship with sleep. Considering that it's something we do for a third of our lives, we don't really know very much about it. On this channel, along with offering my perspective on physical fitness, I'll also talk about some of the things I've seen and experienced while being a sleep tech for a little under a decade. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to offer any medical advice. This is just to offer a different perspective and to maybe clear up some misinformation that exists around sleep. To start, we'll talk about the different levels of sleep. Sleeping isn't one single activity, there are phases to it, and at any given moment, your brain might be doing something very different from the next. More than likely, you already know about one stage of sleep. You've probably heard of REM sleep, which we just call REM sleep. REM is an acronym for rapid eye movement. If you use a Fitbit to track your sleep, it's probably labeled active sleep. REM sleep tends to get a lot of attention because that's when we dream and when we have nightmares, and a lot of people are interested in that. Of course, REM is not the only phase of sleep. We also have non-REM, and this is where sleeping gets a little bit more complicated. Non-REM is divided into three different stages, just stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. There actually used to be a fourth stage of non-REM, but after a while we saw that it wasn't very different from stage 3, so the labels were just merged together. We determine the differences between the stages. For example, if you come in for a sleep study, a lot of electrodes are placed on your scalp. We have sensors to detect muscle tension, breathing, heart rate, things like that. When you go into different stages of sleep, your body starts to do different things. You have different brain waves, and this lets us know how deep of a sleep you're going into. Our bodies cycle through the two forms of sleep, normally starting with non-REM. A complete sleep cycle of non-REM and REM typically lasts anywhere from 90 to 110 minutes. Though we don't always go in the exact order, if a person starts off in REM sleep, they're probably sleep deprived. Another sign of sleep deprivation can be falling asleep too quickly. A healthy adult should actually take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. And you might hear that and think, well, that sounds like a really long time. And yeah, it does sound like a long time. That's because we've been conditioned to feel like we need to fall asleep very quickly. And if that doesn't happen, we think something's wrong. I plan on discussing our society's misunderstanding of sleep latencies in a future video. When we're awake with our eyes open, our brain waves are mostly beta waves. If you're sitting watching this video, your eyes are open, then that's what your dominant wave pattern is. If, for some reason, you're listening to this video and your eyes are closed, the beta waves are replaced with alpha waves. Once you're actually asleep and your eyes are closed, hopefully, the alpha waves have been replaced with theta waves. The appearance of theta waves is a very important marker that you've actually fallen asleep. This puts people into stage 1, and stage 1 is very, very fragile. It's easy to wake people up while they're in this stage, and from what I've seen, it rarely lasts for more than 5 minutes or so. After stage 1, people move into stage 2. Stage 2 typically takes up 45 to 55% of our total sleep time. Stage 2 is characterized by K complexes and sleep spindles, along with a lower heart rate and a lower body temperature. K complexes and sleep spindles are electrical activity that appear in the frontal and the central lobes, respectively. You might know of the frontal lobe by the job it performs while we're awake. It's responsible for our emotion regulation, our planning, our reasoning skills. Without a functioning frontal lobe, I wouldn't have been able to write the script for this video, and I wouldn't have been able to check my sources to make sure that everything was correct. K complexes are tall delta waves that last for about 1 second. They seem to act as a way to maintain sleep. I often see people, maybe something disrupts their sleep, and then a K complex will pop up, and almost as if it's saying, hey, don't worry about that, go back to sleep. There's also some research showing that K complexes might play a role in memory consolidation. Sleep spindles are brief bursts of electrical activity that happen in between the frontal and the temporal lobe. Sleep spindles play an important role in synaptic plasticity. Synaptic plasticity is important to our brain's ability to learn and adapt to new things. This is why a good night's rest is important to helping you learn a new skill that you may have practiced the day before. Studies also show that the sleep spindle might play a role in memory consolidation, just like the K complex. So we can take away from this that stage 2 is very important to our brain's ability to learn, remember, and adapt to new things. If you miss out on this stage of sleep, you're probably not remembering things very well. Stage 3 is dominated by tall, heavy, slow delta waves. This has earned it the nickname slow wave sleep. The waves originate in the frontal lobe, just like the K complex, but mainly the younger that you are, the stronger they are. And they can be so strong that they dominate our other sensors that are dedicated to other parts of the brain. Stage 3 is considered the deepest form of sleep. It can be difficult to wake someone up out of this stage, and if you do manage to wake them up, they'll likely have some sleep inertia, which just means that they'll be a little slow on the draw, maybe a little confused for a few minutes after you wake them up. Stage 3 is also where the body repairs and regrows muscle, tissue, and bone, and also where it strengthens the immune system. If you're exercising regularly, which you should be, it's very important that you don't miss out on your stage 3 sleep. Since this stage has so many benefits for the body, it's a little depressing to know that the older we get, the weaker those delta waves become, and the less slow wave sleep we get. I'd like to look into it further, but I'm not fully convinced that aging is the only factor that decreases our slow wave sleep. I've had a lot of patients over the years, and I've had some that are 50 years old with no slow wave sleep worth mentioning, but I've also had some 70, some 80-year-olds with a lot of slow wave sleep. If I had to guess, and it would just be a guess, I think long-term alcohol intake might play a role, but again, I'm really not sure. Moving on to REM sleep, REM is almost indistinguishable from being awake. That's because the beta waves have come back, and our eyes are moving rapidly in REM, so it really looks like someone is lying in bed, awake, reading their phone. There are things that give it away though. Even though the brainwaves look a lot like being awake, the muscle tension has dropped out. That's because the body is paralyzed, more than likely to keep us from acting out our dreams and our nightmares. There is a disorder where our bodies are not paralyzed, and we are free to act out our dreams and our nightmares. This disease, REM behavior disorder, it causes a lot of problems, and it's normally a sign of worse things to come. There's so much involved in it, we'll have to make a future video, talk about that later. REM normally starts 90 minutes after we first fall asleep, but like I said earlier, if you're sleep deprived, it can happen much, much sooner. The first REM period typically lasts about 10 minutes, while the final one takes about an hour. One of the main ways to start lucid dreaming is to use a technique called WILD, Wake-Induced Lucid Dreaming, is what the acronym stands for. A person will try to wake up during one of their longer REM periods, and then try to fall back to sleep while maintaining a level of consciousness. If they're successful, this will lead to them being able to control their dream to some degree. I really want to talk about lucid dreaming more in the future. It's something I've always been interested in and that I really can't do. It's something my dad claims that he can do. And it's really a concept that helped me get into the sleep field in general. But for now, REM is an important stage of sleep. Research has shown that it can help us with our memory consolidation, and some say that it helps us to process our emotions. There's a lot of theories on how dreams might be beneficial for the body. Too much to cover right now. We're going to have to talk about that in the future as well. So what affects our sleep stages? Many things hurt our sleep. Poor sleep hygiene, noise pollution, light pollution, and stress are all things that can lower the quality of rest that we get. But there are things that can affect specific stages of sleep. REM in stage 3, at first glance, seem to be the easiest to disrupt. This is concerning since disrupting stage 3 can impair our brain's ability to repair the body, while disrupting REM can impair our brain's ability to heal the mind. Therefore, we should know what to be on the lookout for. Alcohol intake before bed can lower the amount of REM sleep that we get. Alcohol intake in general can wreak havoc on the quality of sleep that we get, so this is just another reason to avoid drinking before bed. If you need extra reasons to avoid a traumatic brain injury, studies have shown that traumatic brain injuries can lower the quality of all of our sleep, but it can specifically lower the amount of REM that we get. Studies show that depression can actually increase the amount of REM sleep that we get at the cost of our stage 3. I find this interesting. It's almost like the brain is prioritizing healing the mind rather than the body for those who are depressed. Hopefully this shows that sleeping is more complicated than it might first appear. Even though we're resting, our brains are actually doing quite a bit of work. As shown by our removal of stage 3, we don't fully understand sleep. Our understanding of it evolves, it changes, and it grows. At first glance, it might seem like REM and stage 3 are the most important forms of sleep. but that might be a hasty assumption to make. Hopefully from watching this video, you see that stage 2 does provide benefits to the body, and it's possible that stage 1 might have hidden benefits that we haven't discovered yet. I think understanding our bodies is an important part of being human. And part of that is knowing what our body is doing during a third of our life while we're unconscious. An example of what can happen when people don't have a strong grasp of their sleep, and another reason I want to make videos like this, is the Uberman sleep schedule. Years ago, the Uberman sleep schedule was a technique that was thrown about the biohacking and self-improvement hemisphere of the internet. By sleeping for 20 minutes every 4 hours, constantly, you would, in theory, get more hours in your day to be productive, and you would always feel rested. The technique worked by putting you directly into REM sleep for each of those naps, allowing you to skip the unneeded parts of sleep. In theory, the 20-minute naps would add up to the amount of REM sleep a person needed to function. I don't actually know if anyone did this. If you did it, or if you know someone who did, please let me know how your experience was. I don't think very many people actually did this. Because from what I've seen, this would just put you in a constant state of sleep deprivation. If you went directly into REM sleep, you're obviously missing out on the benefits from stage 3, but also the other benefits from the other stages. From what I can tell, getting into this sleep schedule was also very difficult. It took a very long time for those naps to start to feel refreshing. And once you were in it, if you ever missed a nap, that felt like torture. So even though in theory, this technique was supposed to let people be more productive and feel more rested, it really seems like it would just put you in a very strict and unforgiving lifestyle. I want to be clear that I do find concepts like this interesting, and I do think we should explore things like this. But if we have more education about sleep and about how our bodies work, we can skip some of the unnecessary techniques that don't really help, and maybe focus on ones that could, and skip a little bit of the suffering involved. So yeah, if you like the video, please give it a like. If you dislike the video, then give it a dislike. That's what that's for. Yeah, if you want to hear more sleep stuff and physical fitness stuff, subscribe. Hopefully I'll make more videos. We'll see what happens.